I continue my comments on the chapter 5 of the book Superior: The Return of Race Science by Angela Saini. And for those who would stumble upon this video, I know myself to be what Hegel, the philosopher, calls reason. And the purpose of reason is to equalize the world with itself by seeking to understand the world, because reason must see itself reflected everywhere in the world, in the right and the left, in above and below. So I'm not uh, condemning or praising the book by Angela Saini. I'm trying to explain and to interpret what she means. But first, I will just take a quote from the book The Consequences of Equality by Matthew Battaglioli. There's just a statistics which is enlightening. He says that the average real median household income in the United States across all races annually as of 2013 is broadly $51,000. For whites, it is slightly above at $57,000. For Hispanics, it is considerably lower at $39,000. Way at the top are Asians at $68,000, and way at the bottom are blacks at $33,000. He doesn't mention the Jews, but yeah. So the idea of the book and the chapter on race realism by Angela Saini is to say that research and inquiry and investigation in the realm of racial science is dangerous, but race realism is a moment in the process of world spirit coming to full consciousness of himself. And even though these are in the West mainly whites who produce race realism in the forms of science, it is a knowledge which is true for all races. If good science, if it is done properly, is valuable for any individual wherever he lives, whatever his origin. So by learning about themselves, whites provide others, Asians, blacks, Hispanics, people of all races, about a knowledge of themselves and enable the understanding, the grasping, the cognitive grasping of sociological, economic, social phenomena that otherwise would remain in darkness. And Richard Lynn, the psychologist, published a book titled The Global Bell Curve, and he shows that in all the societies that he was able to investigate on 5 continents, there is on average a hierarchy of income and social status depending on the ethnic background. It's not that all people, for instance, all Asians are above all blacks, because this is not how it works. It's a bell curve. It's just a certain proportion, a certain quantity of people of a certain determinate ethnic background have more probabilities of having a higher IQ, and therefore IQ is correlated with social success, so they have a higher probability, and with the greater numbers it becomes a necessity. And that's why on average Asians are at the top, the Jews are at the top, then Asians, then whites, then Hispanics, then blacks, and so on. And this is true in all societies, whether there are whites in it or non-whites. In Asian societies where there are multiple ethnic groups, it also works like that. So it's not about hating others because they are more intelligent or less intelligent. It's about understanding and making reality transparent and clear and intelligible. Because if you do not understand race realism, the economic, social, political phenomena all over the world are totally unintelligible. You cannot understand anything, and you fantasize about some weird causes bringing forth the effects that you see, and you imagine schemes and manipulations. There are manipulations, I don't doubt it, but sometimes the most simple explanation is the best. And yeah, so she says that there was a journal of so-called scientific publications which defended a pan-Nordic view of science, and they saw their quarterlies, their publications, as being of interest to white Northern Europeans who, according to them, were threatened by immigration, racial intermixing, and the anti-racism of the cosmopolitans. And the great Hegelian irony is that in its development, spirit differentiates itself from the zeitgeist of liberal wisdom and cosmopolitan view and anti-racist view by becoming a race realist. This is a separation of some people, of moments of consciousness which become race realists and even racist sometimes. And the purpose of the movement is not to remain in the negative, but to be brought forth by a cognitive development to the idea that you left in the first place, which is human equality and cosmopolitan views, but with the negative moment incorporated in your development. And this is true spirit, because spirit wants to equalize itself with itself. He wants to be one in all human consciousnesses. That's why Paul in the Bible says that there shall be no Jews, no Greeks, and so on and so forth, and no male, no female. So spirit seeks equality because it finds its freedom in its equality with the other. When two become one, they are free. And so yeah, spirit wants equality, and spirit wants to be at home in the whole world. Spirit is a cosmopolitan because the mind of the spiritual being is a citizen wherever he goes on the planet or on the world. He wants to be at home everywhere. So the only difference between the leftist view and the right-wing view is that it is neither the left nor the right which is the truth. It is the movement of going from the abstract universality of the left, which negates white identity by promoting an abstract universality. And the movement of consciousness will negate this abstract universality by particularizing itself, by bringing forth negativity, difference, separation, in this case by studying race realism and negating the anti-racist science of the establishment. But then the spiritual process will continue, and the purpose will be to re-establish the identity with that from which you have been separated. And only this reunion is the spiritual process, and what Hegel calls a concrete universality. And it is only in spirit that men are equal, because biologically they are not equal. There are differences in biology, in intelligence, in character, in ways of behavior. So men are different in their natural existence, but they can be and they must be equalized and made spiritual brothers in the realm of thought. This is the whole process of Hegel's philosophy, and you can only arrive at spirituality by going through the moment of rationalistic intelligence, Anglo-Saxon intelligence, and scientific, empirically minded sciences. It's a path that everyone hates, but it's necessary because, as Hegel says, spirit is that which contains der Verstand und die Vernunft within itself. It contains the negative moment and the speculative moment of reuniting what has been separated by the understanding. she says that those people that she mentioned, the Nordic race realists, must have had access to the highest peak of the U.S. government and the U.S. establishment. But what about the race deniers? What about all those who censor, who manipulate, who falsify the data, who refuse to finance honest research? Who, I'm not blaming them because I understand the process, but don't you think that they too have a lot of power and have access to the highest academias, the highest schools, the highest newspapers, the highest television channels? They are everywhere because we are constantly told that race does not exist, that it's a myth, and so on and so forth. So it's not because a tiny proportion of race realists may have had access to the highest level of US government, then the anti-racists have not the remnant of all the power, which is, I don't know, 95% of the power. And these people were keeping scientific racism alive. That's quite ambiguous because race realism can bring about racism. There can be racism without race realism and race realism without racism, but there can be both. But the true path is to use race realism as a liberating influence, because let me take an example. If you discover that certain groups of people on average are less intelligent than the average population, the first idea that you have is, oh, we hate them, we must reject them. But a more profound idea is IQ is not the result of the individual's achievements. You do not choose your own IQ. It depends on partly of your genes and your education and your upbringing and the social condition and the economic condition in which you grew up, the food, the quality of the food you had, the quality of the education, the many factors. So an individual does not choose his or her IQ. And if there are correlations between IQ and crime, for instance, and there are, as a matter of fact, you cannot fully blame the individual who perpetrates a crime because he has a below average IQ, because he's not responsible for his own IQ. So by understanding reality, you are removing part of the hatred and the guilt and the shame which is brought forth to those who fail as being employed, those who are unemployed because they have a lower IQ, those who have accidents because they have a lower IQ, or who perpetrate crimes. If you understand that they are determined socially and biologically to act the way they do, at least partly, you can more easily forgive them and remove the hatred that you have for them. And you cannot fix a problem if you do not have the right diagnosis, and you need first to study clearly and without passion the situation, and only then you can cure the one who suffers. But if you refuse to even look at the problem, you cannot cure or help or provide assistance. So that's what I wanted to say, and yeah.